Hey there, it's Jeff Luther, and you are diving into the podcast for the Service Business Blueprint. This is where I walk with you and help you unlock the secrets to building a thriving service-based business. We talk about everything from starting out to setting milestones in your company you didn't even know would exist. We'll cover entrepreneurship, personal growth, mindset, everything you need for success in your service-based business. You ready to build that blueprint? All right, guys, I am genuine. I so appreciate you guys being here to do this. I watch you, and Tersh, it took you like 14 seconds to light into Josh. I was wondering how long it was going to take you to start giving him shit.
Yeah.
So I was not disappointed.
It's pretty typical. It's pretty typical.
That's what we do. It's what we do every day.
All right, so a little background. Josh. Married, family, kids, dog, all the stuff?
So most people think I'm married. I've been with my significant other for almost 12 years now. We moved across the country together. We have 4 fur babies. The oldest is 8. So it's like
Talk about a clinger. He followed her
the country. She couldn't get rid of me. She tried.
She couldn't
Yeah,
shake
she
you?
tried. I held on for dear life. We each have 2 kids. So her kids live here full time, so they're kind of like my kids now. But we moved across country to get away from the cold in Wisconsin about 2 years ago, and it's been the best thing we've ever done.
Nice. And you're in Arizona,
It's
right?
been 2 years.
Yeah, it's been 2 years already. Yeah, we're in Arizona, so we love it.
Okay.
It is sunshine 300 days a year, no gloomy winters, beautiful weather most of the year except for when it's super hot. But when it's super hot, we just go in the pool.
That's right. Yeah. Take the good with the bad, right? I'd much rather have the heat than I have the cold.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thank you. And Tersh, you're in Savannah, right?
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
Right outside of Savannah, Georgia. Born and raised here. I lived in Atlanta for a little while. Married, and we have 4 kids and no dogs. 12 cats. We live on 250 acres, and they're really farm cats, so they keep the mice.
He
under
just says
control.
that because he's actually like one of those like really weird old cat guys. You know, he's got like cats
It's
like
like a cat
crawling all
lady.
over him when he's sitting down, like all over his legs and stuff and purring.
Yeah, right. I knocked them things out.
Cats. Those feral cats are eating all the quail.
Yeah, they eat everything.
Yeah.
Including too much cat food.
So where were you in Atlanta?
Peachtree City. Are
Okay.
you familiar with it?
Yes, sir.
On the south side.
Yeah, I'm in Charleston. I moved to Charleston from Decatur.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
And I grew
So-
up like rural Georgia.
Where
Fairplay, a little town called Fairplay.
Fairplay? That sounds familiar. Where's that about?
So it's west. So it's almost like you go past Villa Rica and then south on I-20.
Okay.
So and not far from Peachtree City.
Yeah.
Really.
That's what I was thinking. Like close to LaGrange.
About an hour from LaGrange, hour and a half
Okay.
north of LaGrange. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I live in Peachtree City with my mom. My parents got divorced when I was young.
Okay.
And I moved to Peachtree City with her and went to school at Stars Mill.
Okay.
And then after, weirdly enough, I was the 50 free state champ in swimming, and then left there and
You never told me that.
to Savannah.
You're a swimmer?
I know I didn't. I was. I ain't no more. I'm a sinker now.
Nah, you float.
Full of shit.
Oh, that's awesome. So Peachtree City, that's the golf cart community.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You can get anywhere from one point to the other
Yeah.
on a golf cart path.
Yeah, it's a cool little town. No big signs.
Everything has to be 6 feet or lower.
Yeah.
Everything is very compartmentalized. Industrial is in this section, commercial is in this section, residential is in this
Yeah.
section. They don't mix and mingle.
Yep. Yeah, it's and then of course all the pilots, the Delta pilots that live there.
They all live there. Yep. Till they all got laid off.
Yeah.
01 and 2, whatever.
All right, guys. So one thing that I've kind of figured out going through and watching your podcast, which actually it's super educational, but it's funny as shit. Like, you guys give each other a really hard time. It's like your brothers.
We've been told that a few times. The thing is, like, a lot of
it's really easy to make fun of Josh, though.
the thing is, like, people think it's like isolated to just the podcast, but we do this shit on Voxer like all day. That voice app that you saw me using, we literally just give each other crap all day. But the nice thing is we have personalities where we don't get, nobody gets offended. I mean, I might get offended sometimes. I just don't tell them.
Right. Yeah. You're
really. Tell me when you do, because I'm going to keep doing it.
So 2 different businesses. Tersh, how long have you owned your HVAC company? And I say HVAC. Do you want me to include the R? Because I can't.
He's got a few other letters you could probably add to that, because he does other stuff too.
Yeah. So it's actually HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and there's 2 companies, and they're in the same market, and they kind of compete against each other, but not really.
Okay.
And so the first one started in 2014 with my business partner Tim, and then started the podcast in 2017. And there were listeners asking a lot of questions about this podcast.
Yeah.
So I decided, glutton for punishment. Let's do another business so people can follow along with the process of starting a business. Well, I ended up buying a business from a friend of mine, and I say buy as a very loose term because I inherited a lot of debt. And fired majority of the customers and started off from scratch, rebranded the company. I mean, 100% would have been better off just starting another company. And so rebranded that company, and I'm still being plagued by the old names just popping up randomly here and there. And then, and basically in 2020, rebranded, fired all the customers, and grew from there with that company. And so that company, Service Emperor, it targets more affluent, so lower volume, higher margin.
Okay.
And then TriStar is higher volume, lower margin. So property management, Section 8 housing, that type of things.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. I love that. And do you do, is it mostly maintenance? Do you do new construction, or is it a combination?
Service work, service and replacement on both only, because we've never been built for the new construction world. We just like, I know service. That's what I've always done. I've done service from day one. I was service manager to GM, and so like I've never been too fond of new construction.
Okay. And not knowing that business, but traditionally your margin is higher in service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We run 75% margin in service. And so, yeah. And new construction is way less than that.
Yeah. So your margins are about like mine, between 7 and 5%. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, something like that.
Thanks, man. And Josh, you were in HVAC.
Yeah,
right?
I stumbled into it. I did not have a background. I didn't have family members. I didn't have like the story where you have like a second or third generation brought into it. I'm not even handy. Like the sign right here.
Nope.
I hired someone for that because I got fired from putting too many holes in the wall at our last house. And this house is a little nicer, so we said, Josh, you can't put any holes in the wall anymore. So we hire people for that. Like, we just hung some racks in our garage, and we hire people for that too, because I for some reason just can't quite get the studs when I drill into the.
I'll tell you what though, like I punched a hole through a wall one time because the studs were off. They weren't 16 inches on center, and I like I swear they must have bought a 2x4 from Lowe's because it was like that. Because at the bottom I measured it, and then at the top it was different, and man, it pissed me off. But
yeah,
I've
been fired from that. But I stumbled into the industry. I had a small local company that wanted someone. I've always been really into numbers, data, statistics, analytics, stuff like that, and they needed an accountant. I wasn't even really that good of an accountant, and I'd be happy to tell him that now. He probably knows that, my first boss. But I've always been in the small business. My dad's run a small business pretty much my entire life in martial arts. So I grew up in that. I ran a couple schools for him at one point, did the marketing and all that kind of stuff. So I had somewhat of a background in business, and then quickly took over managing that company, doing operations, marketing, some sales, parts running, install helping, like literally whatever the company needed, because we were in like extreme amounts of debt, like six figures of debt. I would see the letters come in from the IRS and stuff. So I did whatever the hell we had to do to make it work. Learned a lot of how not to run a service business in the first 3.5 years, and then started finding Facebook groups, and that's actually where Tersh and I connected. We connected through a mutual coach, because he was doing his service business, I was doing mine. We kind of connected through there, and then when he started Service Emperor, I was at a company in a coaching group called CEO Warrior, and he joined, and we actually met in person out there at some end of year planning events and stuff like that.
Oh man, if I could go back in time and not join a Facebook group.
Right. It's a rabbit hole now.
Y'all have a big Facebook group.
No, well, the one that where Josh and I met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the,
You're trying to say that you would have never wanted to meet me? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying, in a different life.
So yeah, that's in my journey. Actually part of that community, the CEO Warrior community, I started getting really good at that company at the marketing side. Started helping people in the group and just giving away like free advice, free content, and they started asking for help. And so I saw it as an opportunity to start my own company. And that was almost exactly 4 years ago, actually, right before the pandemic started in February of 2020. And then it's grown to this point now. We have like 90 clients. We're all over US and Canada. 4 years already.
4 years.
So been out of the industry for 3 years, and now I'm primarily focused on just generating helpful content for contractors. Try to keep them entertained as much as we can as well, so it's not boring, but try to teach them something new. Tersh is the same way. That's why he started the show. There was nothing out there that was just giving to business owners, managers, technicians who wanted to become business owners to help them learn. And it's grown from there, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities for both of us, and we're very grateful for it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a theory about that with service-based businesses. I think there's a little bit, and I'm in one as well. So this is not a dig at all, but I think there's a little bit of pride and ego that goes in with this business. So people don't want to hire coaches. It's like, well, it's
because it's male dominated. We don't ask for directions either. Yeah.
Predominantly males.
Bunch of dumbasses is what it is.
That's about it.
I hope I'm not offending anyone that's listening to this.
Oh, and here's my rule, and this is why I've got 3 boys, 14, 16, and 18. Offense is taken, it's not given. So if you're not given offense, then the rest of it's up to them, right?
There you
Works
go.
for me.
So I want to ask about the Facebook group. You guys, because is it that you would stay away from Facebook groups because it's like a safe place for people to say just a bunch of negative shit? And that's been my experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that. There's a lot of bad advice. I mean, it's tough for us to preach about giving away free advice and hoping people will listen to it, and then on the other hand say those people are giving away terrible advice. I mean, you shouldn't take what they're saying to heart. It's hard for me to say that, and most of the times you won't catch me saying it because not every coach works for every person. So sometimes the advice one person gives one person is not going to work for another. But that's not the things that are being said. They're saying, you read that this is the fix-all for everything. This is the silver bullet. And a lot of times people are looking for that magic silver bullet in those Facebook groups, and that's not what you're going to get. You're going to get, unfortunately, in some of the Facebook groups, you ask a question and then it's RIP inbox because every salesperson and their brother that's in the Facebook group is all of a sudden going to hit you up in your inbox and try and sell you something.
Yeah.
So the Facebook groups, I used to be super active in a lot of them because I felt like I was giving back to the industry.
Yeah.
And if I found out that it was a lot of time wasted, because you have a lot of people in there that I call ask holes, and they'll ask the same question in multiple groups to get the answer that they want, and then they don't implement anything, and they'll 6 months later are asking the same damn question again.
Yeah.
And so it gets very old watching that over and over again, and it can be such a time suck too. Like, we know social media can be a time suck in general, and I think back to, like, all right, 4 years now, how much time have I wasted that I could have been educating myself on things? So
it's a catch-22 though. Like, I mean, there's times when
it is.
There's certain groups, like I'm actually a part of a coaching group for agencies, and honestly, I don't use a lot of the stuff that is in their curriculum. I don't watch.
Josh is.
Well, I'm the one that I like access to the group, so I can ask the questions that are on my mind with other people who deal with the same stuff. And that was the same thing with when we were in COR. I love the Facebook group because it was all the same people in the same ecosystem. So Facebook groups done right can be really great.
The private ones,
ones
like are that way.
Yeah, I feel like that. But the ones that are like open to the public and they let everyone in and they don't really have much of an admin oversight, it just gets messy. You know, there's always someone's always trying to sell something or trying to start a dialogue and they're trying to sell something versus actually just trying to help. And everybody's in what, you know, it's funny because the world, like, everyone's an expert these days. They just take someone else's advice and they make it their own, and they're an expert. And then they shout really loud on video, and people are like, "Oh, this guy's so smart. I just follow this guy." And it's like they're
like, "Man, we were talking about that 2 years ago. Like, get out of here."
Yeah. And I found too that to your point, Tersh, about the people asking the questions, is they keep asking the questions and they're just looking for permission. They already know their answer and they know what they're going to do. They're just looking for somebody to finally agree
I think
with
that's that is the one nice thing, because sometimes people need that. We just don't, like, for myself, I've never worked in a digital marketing company. So there's things I just have, like, even the names of the job titles that I'm trying to, like, say, I have no idea what that looks like or what the pay. I've never worked. If you drop me in an HVAC company, I know exactly what we need to do. But there's things that I just can't see beyond what we're doing already. And that makes it tough. And it's nice to have, like, an outlet to ask that question and not feel like I'm going to be looked at like a dumbass. Like,
oh, you're looked at that way. Anyway.
Well, nobody says it except for you.
Well, that's because we're good buds, and I just wouldn't let you walk around looking that way.
Right. He wants you
Looking
to
out
know.
for
He
you.
wants you to know everything.
That's some brotherly love right there.
Yeah.
It is. I love you, brother.
So do you guys, like, all right, so Tersh, you've built an empire, right? And Josh, you have the experience, the marketing experience. Do you guys collaborate? It's like you have each other's own little, like you have an incubator, which is pretty cool.
Tersh is usually one of the first to know, like, anything that I know. He knows pretty quick what's going on. So yeah, it's nice for him. He kind of gets to, of course, I probably put him down more rabbit holes than he needs to go, because I send him stuff and he's probably digging into something he probably shouldn't be.
Yeah.
He'll say, like, Apple Maps. He's like, "Hey man, have you heard about this Apple Maps thing?" And I'm like, "No, let's check it out." It was like a year ago, and Apple Maps still isn't a thing, but we've
it's gonna be
one
Get
day.
in early.
Good
Get
news
in early.
is there's a Service Emperor location on Apple Maps, and it's optimized, but nobody uses it. But it's there.
One day.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like kind of the perfect match there. So I was wondering, it's like, so Josh, you can test in Tersh's business. Tersh, you get the benefit of getting in early for something that does work, right? Because in digital advertising, it's a lot of testing. Is that right?
Always.
Changing up stuff. As soon as you figure it out, Google changes it.
Yeah.
Josh went in probably maybe a year ago and did some optimization, and me being me, just I've ignored it since he'd optimized it. And then he went in like a week or two ago, and he's like, "Man, when's the last time you updated any of this stuff? I was like, never. Not since you optimized it a year ago. He's like, this stuff's changed. So he changes it and it increases the, rankings and everything. And I was like, I should probably get somebody to do this on a full-time
You're too cheap.
basis, huh?
You can't afford me.
No.
Man, it's 75% margin. You can afford whatever you want.
I don't want to afford it. That's a better way to say
There
it.
you go. Yeah. Yeah. Too cheap or too choicey. One of the two.
I spend so much time doing podcast stuff that I really, and I know this because it was a choice that I made 2 years ago. I think it's coming up on 2 years ago, that I would focus more and more time on the podcast and working towards growing the podcast and making it a better experience for the listeners. That I knew that I would start neglecting the service businesses. That's why I have people in place for that, and so there are things that are my responsibility still with the service businesses that gets very little of my attention just because of the focus that I put on the podcast.
Okay.
And I know that.
Well, I think that's a great business lesson, right? Because you see these people out there, and social media is such a talk about time suck. You see these people who have like, oh my God, they started another business. Like, how are they doing this? I can't even get one business to be profitable, and they got 8 businesses, and they're all like, of course they're growing so fast and all this stuff, but you can only focus on one thing at a time. And that's, I know this, like for us, we don't do Google ads, we don't do Facebook ads, we don't do YouTube ads, we don't do a lot of stuff that other digital marketing companies do, because we focus exclusively where our lane is, which is primarily SEO, website, and outbounding to existing customers. But like Tersh said, and honestly, since he started doing that, people tell us all the time, like, see podcasts everywhere. We're enhancing the video production. We're getting shorts done. We're doing on all these other platforms. Like it's really picked up even more so than it already had 2 years ago. But because he's focused on it. But something has to give, right? You have to give up something to focus on something.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always a trade-off. And I will say too, like your podcast, how do you make a service business sexy? I mean, you don't, right? But your podcast is really good. You have great guests. You guys go along really well. It's fun. It's fun to watch. It's good. You've done a good job. So I'm glad that your business has suffered as a result, Tersh, because the podcast is amazing.
Yeah, the thing about it is like Josh mentioned earlier about numbers. Like I like numbers too, but I tend to, if I start messing with the numbers or looking into it, I allow it to become a rabbit hole. Yeah. And so it's funny because Tony actually brought in a minority partner last year, I think it was. Tony, and he's like, I can tell what report you're working on, because all of a sudden you start asking everybody a million questions, whatever it is. Oh, you're looking at the accounts receivable report right now. You're asking everybody about the counts that the receivables that are still. And I was like, yeah, that's my personality. Like I'm going to hyper focus on this report and these numbers, because while I can't, like, we automate a lot. Josh automates a lot. I automate a lot. So there's a lot of the business that runs by itself, and anything that's repeated twice is something I try to automate. And so, but collecting money is not something that's repeatable. Like it's not something I can automate necessarily. Yeah. So they know that that's where I'm gonna get some deep diving in that area. Yeah. But when that happens, it's like a bane. I'm a bane of their existence.
Right.
They're like, Tersh, just shut up and go away and do a podcast.
Yeah, it's like when you go away to a seminar or something for a couple of days. When you come back, everybody's got their head down.
Yeah, cat's away, the mice will play.
Yeah. So in that vein, I've seen y'all have several sponsors on your podcast, which is awesome. That's got to be fun, right?
That's a new thing. That's
it's
relatively
been a little
new.
over probably 15 months, 16, 18 months, somewhere in there in that range. Honestly, it started. We had a big CRM in our space come to Tersh, and they wanted to work with us, and we just happened to interview Billy Stevens from Sarah. And for us, I mean, Tersh and I think the biggest thing that we bring is we are very careful about who we recommend and work with. And I'm the same way with my company. He's always been the same way because he has a group that he still meets with regularly that they talk about all this stuff, and he's very careful of like who he recommends, because once you lose trust, especially in today's world, like it's gone, and it can get spread so quickly. So it's a very careful thing. So we really focus on, we want to work with people that, one, we think are really doing something unique, not just they're doing the same thing everyone else is doing. And we have, like, Billy Stevens is a great example in the home services space. He's constantly innovating. Justin Riley from Upfrog is the same way. He gives up great, valuable, free content in his Facebook group. And then some of the other partners are just really great software type companies, or they offer something that's completely unique that not everyone sees, so we can bring that stuff to light. But we work with people that we really like. We love all our partners. They're all really great people. They have great service, but it has been a newer thing, so it's kind of like you got to be careful a little bit. I've gotten in. I don't know how to say this.
Can speak his mind.
Just tell the story. We're all dying.
Josh can be an asshole sometimes.
There are people, believe it or not, in the home services space that I don't care for too much. So I sometimes.
I'll tell you. Let me.
Go ahead.
Josh,
I'll do the
this.
PC version. So go ahead.
So Josh is extremely passionate about people that he feels that may be getting taken advantage of.
Okay.
And especially contractors who are younger or less experienced, who have not experienced the bad side of the industry, or the side of the industry that could take advantage of you. And when he sees the writing on the wall that this is happening, it's fair, or it appears that it's happening. Maybe it's not actually happening, or it's not being, there's no malicious intent by the person that's doing it. If it could screw over people, contractors that are working hard. I mean, the average contractor, the average HVAC plumbing contractor is operating on a 3 or 4% net profit. And if somebody is taking 10% of your money, like, you're losing money from somebody that is, whether it might work for other contractors, but if it's something that potentially is not going to work, Josh has a very hard time with holding that information inside.
You said that very eloquently.
It spurts out everywhere. I'm like, I'll see a post and I'm like, no, I'll immediately message Josh. Don't even read the post, much less comment on it. Don't even read it.
The thing is, it's so funny because, like, I'll get people, and it's probably because I've said stuff and disagreed with certain people who are influencers. I don't even really like using the word. Like, Tersh and I we will never reference ourselves as that ever. But so people send me stuff. I'm like blocked from groups and everything else, so they screenshot it now and then they send it to me. And I am but then they'll comment or they'll like the post. They'll comment like, "Oh, great, so happy for you, man." They cheer them on, but it's like this underbelly of the industry is like, I'm gonna on Facebook say you're amazing, and then be like, "This is the worst thing ever." Like, it's
Look
like
at this
Can we? Where's being genuine? Like, if you don't, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to not like everything.
So I don't want people to ever think that I'm not genuine. Just know that I'm just genuinely quiet.
He tells me his opinions.
I'll just say it in a private scenario, and sometimes Josh and I don't agree with things, and that's okay, because Josh is always wrong, and that's fine. But there's times where it's like, yeah, Josh, you're right. Probably wouldn't have said it that way, but you are right. Next time,
it's funny because I had like I think it was last November, we had 2 events back to back in Orlando, and then I had a third event that was like out of the industry. It was literally like 9 days in a row of events, and I was a little frustrated with my team, and honestly, I don't even think it was their fault. It was just whatever, frustration got to me, and I had a message typed up in Slack, And then I took that message and I threw it in Chat GPT and I asked it to give me a positive
I
spin.
remember.
And then I took that
Sound
message and
completely
I
different.
put that into Slack. So I did learn some lessons, and ChatGPT can be great for taking something and turning it around into more of a positive experience for people versus a negative connotation. Uh,
It's wild how different that the way it's worded, the simple wording that ChatGPT comes up with, because I did the exact same thing at the same time as Josh did, because I was in the process of releasing an employee to a new opportunity, aka firing
Yeah.
this person, and I was like, I wanted to cuss this individual out because Josh and I were away from work, and they knew the process is done the same way. I don't like, so my business is 100% remote. Like we don't have an office, so like our CSRs, dispatchers, and everybody, they're on Zoom, they're on a virtual, they work from home, and the process is done the same way if I'm here or if I'm in California, if I'm in Phoenix,
Yeah.
wherever. The process is the same. But when I was away, they were like, "Oh, Tersh is out of the state, so that means we're gonna do it however we want to." And I was like, "I don't micromanage when I'm here, so why do I need to micromanage whenever I'm in Orlando?"
Right.
And so I was livid. I was pissed. And Josh and I were just talking about that, and we just happened to, like, I was like, I literally just did the exact same thing last night, and the message that came out, I think I might even send it to Josh. Oh no, I sent it to Tony for sure, and they were like, "Yeah, you didn't write that." I was like, "You right? I did not write that because I would not have been that nice."
Right. Yeah. I did not write that. Feelings would have been hurt if.
Oh yeah, I would have crushed that person's soul
Yeah.
because I just, the thing about it is like I can disconnect myself from Service Emperor and TriStar a little bit, but those are still companies that I brought from the ground up, like from origin. Like they're still a part of my children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whenever and Tony and we had an issue a couple months ago, I think, and like I got heated and I got passionate with Tony, and he was like, and then later on I apologized. I was like, "Look, man, I'm really sorry that I reacted the way that I did." Which is weird because usually he would have reacted the exact same way to me. Like we feed off of each other's energy,
Okay.
and he didn't. He stayed calm the whole time, and I think that's what irritated me even more was the fact that he didn't get riled up. And then later on, when I apologized, he was like, "No, man, I really do appreciate the passion that you have because that lets me know that you still love the company and you want the best for it." And I was like, "Yeah, well, kudos to you for reacting that
Yeah.
way because I don't think I would have reacted the same way if you had came at me the same way I came at you." So
Yeah. Do you worry about that at all with your company about what the appearance may be to them that you're focusing so much on the podcast, or you over that?
I used to be worried about it, but what happened, what the way that I overcame that was first off, our coaches have taught us this, like you wherever you focus, where you're gonna grow.
Yeah.
And like Josh was talking about earlier, when I brought Tony in as a business partner, I sat the whole company down and said, "Hey, look, roles are going to change. I will not be mentally present. I'll be physically here. I'll see you on Zoom over here. You can
Yeah.
see me. If you have a question, we can interact. But I mentally will be with the podcast, or I'll be doing something else because we're doing other things too, not just podcasting."
Yeah.
And so like I want you to understand that Tony is the go-to person now. Tony is taking over roles that I used to take over, and the business isn't less important to me. The podcast isn't more important to me. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so when we had a problem, was when I didn't communicate that. When there was just assumptions in place, where it's
Yeah.
like, it looks like you're not really paying any attention. Well, actually, I am paying attention because I'm looking at the numbers, and I just am not asking you questions like I used to. Now I can see all the reports without having to ask you. I can see the automations without it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could have been a problem. It was a problem at one point until I communicated about it. And I'm not a terrible communicator. So
You should know, right? Most of us think
Oh,
we're
yeah.
great. But we're terrible.
no, I am terrible at communicating. So I have to over communicate. And when I over communicate, to me, I'm over communicating. But to everybody else that's on my team, and especially my wife, I'm still under communicating. And I'm like, geez, y'all gotta chill out with this communication crap.
Yeah. I have a question for both of you, and this is relative to something you said earlier. Like as your podcast is growing, you get big, you're getting sponsors, you have a pretty big audience. When you started getting sponsors, and we can cut this out. Like I'm coming in from left field on this one.
No, you're good.
But when y'all started getting sponsors, because a lot of people that are listening to your podcast are aspiring to what they want to do, what you're doing, right? So when you started getting sponsors, did it change the dynamic? Did it change maybe how you did your show notes, or maybe things that you wanted to include or not include? And you can,
I didn't have to do it all.
That's true. That is 100% true. Like the
There you
first,
go.
I've been in May is 3 years, I think we've been doing it together. So the first year for sure, we didn't have anyone. So I was doing a lot of the marketing and trying to promote and set up like our Facebook group, so that when people came in, we got an email address and all that, all that stuff. Tersh was
He was trying to make sure everybody was active in the
trying to
Facebook group,
get this
with it.
stuff going, and Tersh was doing a lot of the audio and the video and the show notes, and then trying to hire an outsourced person for like a blog, or just take the transcription. And if ChatGPT would have been around along that time, that'd have been great, because he could have done a lot of that stuff. But
nice.
For us, I really don't think much has changed. I mean, I guess we're probably certain guests we probably can't bring on if they represent a certain brand. But honestly,
sure,
anything that we would deem close, we just ask our partners if they're okay with it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
And most of them, they're like, you're good. Just don't promote that company.
Yeah.
Like, because if they're bringing information, because you have some interviews where it's nothing but them selling themselves,
Right.
or it turns into a sales pitch fest. And as long as it's not like that for that product,
Right.
bring.
well, we do
value
the
to
same thing
industry.
with our, because they obviously get more time, so they have more podcast episodes depending on what program or package they sign up for. But we bring value. Like, yes, they're going to know who you're from, and we'll do the intro and all that stuff. Other than that, though, but we just add links to show notes and track those. I mean, that's really the biggest thing. So that way we can say, hey, based on emails and show notes and short videos and all this stuff like this, how many times somebody clicked on your link to go to your website. Other than that, nothing really has changed. Honestly, some of those people we ask to put your valuable stuff, the stuff that you take out of your head and send everyone, just put in our group, add to the group, because then they look at you like a thought leader as well, and it brings more value to the group, which brings more value to everyone that's kind of in our ecosystem.
Okay. And then the dumb question, like, you didn't curb your language or anything, right? You just keep rolling like you always roll.
Yeah, we ain't changed.
And honestly, I think
think so.
that's like you said, because people it's not scripted. It's not. Sometimes it's hard for us because we create a show title to try to get people to tune into the lives, and then we end up not talking about that thing at all. And then we have to go back and refigure out the title for the blog and everything else, because it's not the same topic.
Right.
It just happens, but the conversation flows. And so as you're listening, it's still entertaining. Like, you don't feel like I have to go back to this topic because I have to talk about this topic. We talk about just whatever flows naturally.
Right. Yeah.
And we feed off of each other pretty well. I feel like
I'd say, you guys really do. And it's hard for you to see that because it's just normal for you. But as someone in your audience, you guys do feed off each other very well.
Yeah. So whenever I don't I can look at Josh and I can tell he ain't got a question. I got to come up with a question. And then he can do the same thing with me. Like, I'll be in a daze and he's like, well, that was a great point there. Let's wrap this show up.
All right, so you guys have a wealth of knowledge in this, in the really what I call like home services industry, service-based business industry, and clearly you're willing to share. And the folks, I own a home inspection company, so that's the majority of my audience, but I also have a lot of contractors that listen. How do they get in touch with you? Like, I mean, you have a lot more to offer than I do. You're in all the trades. How do they get in touch with you guys if they want to learn more about marketing? Just follow your podcasts? What's the best way?
Servicebusinessmastery.com is the website. And we're working on actually a bot right now that actually it has all of the information.
So it's like uploading the episodes, so that way you can, and you can try to get the answer from the episode. We'll see how it goes. We're working on it.
Gosh.
Yep. Fingers crossed. I've been told that we're right there. We're right there. We almost have it. And so technology is finally there for us to do this, and then ask it what episode the information came from, and then you can get a link to that episode. So all that will be on servicebusinessmastery.com, and then you can just look up Tersh or Josh Crouch. Josh isn't lucky enough to have.
Yeah, there's a few Josh Crouches. So. I've searched. I try to get there's something called a knowledge panel in Google. There's a damn baseball player that played in the minor leagues that I cannot overcome. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to look for Service Business Mastery in my name or Relentless Digital in my name to find me. But we're on all the platforms except for probably Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called these days.
I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
We might post stuff. I have no idea.
We live stream there every.
I think we got 10
Wednesday.
followers on Twitter.
No, we don't. We have 30,000 followers on Twitter.
You're so full of it. There's probably There's probably
Maybe
13.
10, 30,000.
And that's probably it's probably Julie, Brittany, your parents, couple other people.
Probably.
Mom, Dad.
Yeah. My mom shares my stuff. She'll share stuff sometimes that I've shared just because, or I don't even share it. Like we have, like Josh mentioned, he has handled a lot of he might not have mentioned this. He's handled a lot of our social media stuff. Well, Grace or somebody goes into my accounts and she'll share stuff all the time.
Grace.
And my mom's like, this is just awesome. Like, I love this. I'm like, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not me.
That's Grace for my team because Tersh doesn't share enough stuff, so we do it for him. Sometimes you got to help the slow kid.
Facebook is just not my thing. It's so much just nonsense there.
I know. I tag you all the time and stuff, and you never comment or like it or anything. I just keep tagging you.
Nope. Well, the worst thing is so on Facebook, I had to have a creator's account and my personal account, and they both say Tersh Blissett, and so people will tag the creator account, which is a page. And it's very difficult to access that information from a mobile phone. And so I'm like, man, way to make it difficult, Meta.
You're the one that set it up, so I guess it's your fault.
Yeah, I wish I knew a digital marketing guy that was
actually good.
So terrible. Yeah, that actually knew what they were doing, and they could.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I run into one.
Thanks.
So I have a question about that piece of it too. I just thought of this. So do you have to, and this is probably more for you, Joshua, I don't know, but do you have to market the two companies differently? Since you have the high tier company and then the Section 8 stuff, are you digitally, do you have to be cognizant of who you're marketing to? With this?
Well, I don't do Tersh's marketing. I help him out once in a while. He could probably answer what he does for those.
And so TriStar, we don't market at all because we don't want the wrong person. The people that we target are property managers and that type of things. So we know those individuals. We do not want the general public typically calling us because they're not going to be happy with our service. Okay. And they'll end up giving us a 1-star review because, with TriStar, it's like T-shirts and blue jeans and unmarked vans. Yeah. And then Service Emperor, full uniforms, wrapped vans, fully wrapped vans, everything matches. So if Service Emperor's customers called TriStar, they would be very disappointed. And if TriStar's customers call Service Emperor, they'll be very disappointed as well.
Both for different reasons, right? They're looking for
Exactly.
a totally different experience.
Well, and that's the thing
100%.
with marketing is it's never a blanket across the board. Like, for instance, we get inquiries, like home inspection, for instance. Honestly, home inspection is great for like local Facebook groups. You can get a lot of business just by providing education in those groups. Because what we do is like getting you ranked on Google My Business stuff. That's not necessarily something I would go. I mean, there's people that do. It's just not searched a ton on Google for like home inspection companies. I might go like, hey, who's moved recently and has had a home inspection company? Who'd you hire? And then the people drop the names or tag the company or tag the person. So you really have to know like where you get your business from. Like painting companies, for instance, like the people that did this wall and this door over here, we found them on Facebook. Like I wouldn't necessarily always go to Google for them because it's visual and I want to see like what does the finished product look like. Whereas like HVAC and plumbing, like we don't really care what the visual looks like as much. We need someone that is a great service provider. So if they want to call a high-end company, they're going to look for Service Emperor because Service Emperor's got, a 4.9 star rating and 400 reviews. You have to know your market and like where your customers are trying to find that information, which isn't always the easiest thing to do if you don't know, or if you haven't put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, well, really good point. And what would you say to someone with a service business that was just trying to get into the digital marketing? Would you tell them to start Facebook first, like neighborhood groups?
That's tough. It's tough for me to
set up your GMB. Set up your GMB.
I would definitely have that done, but I would, for me, so ever since Facebook groups came about, every business, even the business that I have now, I've always provided free education in Facebook groups. I don't sell, like literally do not sell anything. So if you're in home inspection, there's a ton of different types of content that you can help someone with, because the thing we do, like if somebody is a professor, a teacher, an educator, we look at them differently than we look at the general population. Like, wow, they're an expert in that field. So when you get looked at as the expert in your field, people come to you and they're like, I don't really care what your rate is. I know you're the best or one of the best. And they look at you differently. But the problem is people don't want to create video. They don't want to create content. And if they do, it's hard to keep up with. It's a time consuming thing. But with a ChatGPT and all of the other tools, like it has become a lot easier to create short form videos that are good.
And it's immediate gratification too, right? Because you think, oh, I put a video up. Why is my phone
well? And
not
I'll
ringing
give you a perfect example. Like we've been paying for ads for a while, but honestly, like because on Relentless Digital side, we're creating so much content. I've had more people tell me in the last week that they've seen me on TikTok. And Tersh knows I literally did not have a personal TikTok until like a month ago.
And he didn't tell me about it until last week. And he accidentally told me about it. He was like, yeah, I got this. I was like, what'd you have?
Yeah, Tersh would send me TikToks all the time. He'd share them with me. And I would never.
He's like, I'm not going to look at TikTok.
I would never open them. But he'd continue to send them to me, even though I told Tersh, like, because
I'd start downloading them, saving the video, and then texting him the video. See how hilarious this is? You should really watch TikTok.
The moral of the story is my son he lives in Wisconsin. He's almost 16. He's like, Dad, I see you everywhere. And I'm like, where's everywhere to you? He's 16. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. As a 16-year-old, like even but we're putting out more volume, more good content, very short form.
Yeah.
And if you're in any sort of business, there is so many ways to get those frequently asked questions. You don't even have to have an app for that. You just know what people ask you. Just put the advice out there.
Oh yeah.
And people, they may not like it, they may not share it, they may not comment, they may not subscribe, but they do see it, and they lurk. There's, I don't know if you remember that stat. There's like 3 or 5% of people are content creators, and like the other 90-some% are consumers. And consumers,
creepers.
and they just, that's what they do is they consume, but they'll never create. So be the person that's creating, because people do notice. We don't realize it until someone tells us, but people do notice.
Right. Yeah, and it takes time, right? It's like I said with the immediate gratification. You think you just put it out. Well, I'll put it out there. I put my Tech video out.
You've been doing the podcast 2 years. We all know the stat. It's like the average podcast is 7 to 8 episodes. Because they start it, and it's like, oh, this is a great fancy thing, and then nobody really says anything because those first episodes are pretty rough. Like, it took me...
It's a slug. Oh, my God. It took me
probably like 9 to 12 months of working with Tersh until I felt comfortable, like, normally jumping in and just being a part of the conversation.
Oh, doing the intro? Like, all right, Josh, you going to do the intro today?
I was too scared to do it.
And then I was like, all right, I'm passing the buck. And he's like, nah. And then he's like, sit there in silence. All right, we're live.
And it takes a while. And that was on a show that had been around for almost 4 years at that point. For me to jump in as a co-host and like find my place. But it's,
I remember those days too. He's like, man, I'm just trying to find my place. I was like, dude, just dive in there.
Yeah.
Like, just jump in with both feet, and if you start to flounder,
but the whole thing is consistency, both on Tersh keeping the show going for as long as he did, and then me just showing up every week and just like figuring it out, because that's what we do as humans. Like we overanalyze. We want to make something so perfect, we never get started.
Yep. Perfect's the enemy of done. There's no doubt about that. And the only reason that I even have this podcast, because I started and everybody said, oh, yeah, you'll probably do 5 or 6 episodes. And the only reason I kept going is just to prove people wrong. I mean, I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe I'm doing this shit again today.
One of the things that we tell people, because we get asked a lot about podcasting and getting started, is create 10 episodes before you release your first one. Because then you have 10 weeks worth of content put out there. So you can mess around for 8 weeks. Hopefully you don't. Or you can just keep recording every week and get into that routine and that habit.
I think that is great advice. I think that's really
It's the only smart thing you said in 50 minutes.
Yep.
Done.
Might as well end on that, I guess. That's the only good nugget you're going to get from him.
And we're done.
Whatever.
Yeah, y'all have been awesome. And I was excited to have you on for sure, to have the opportunity. I was like, oh, these guys, they'll probably say some funny stuff. I've been laughing the whole time. This has been great. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for hanging out on the Service Business Blueprint with me, Jeff Luther. Stay in the loop as we keep delivering these strategies to supercharge your service business. Hit subscribe, leave a review, be part of our growing community. Now you have someone to walk with you as we create your service business blueprint. Until next time, remember, where you focus is where your energy goes. Beliefs turn to things, so choose the good ones.